If you give your employees goods or other benefits that are not simply cash, you have to tell HMRC about it. This is so that they can work out how much tax the employee has to pay and how much national insurance you have to pay on top of the benefit that you've given them. The way you tell HMRC is on a form called a P11D. These are due after the end of the tax year when you report benefits in the last 12 months. They're due to HMRC by the 6th of July. This is also the date that you must tell your employees by that you have reported benefits in kind. Any payment of national insurance is due by you to HMRC by the 22nd of July. It's complicated to work out whether something is a taxable benefit or maybe whether it's a tax-free benefit. And if you'd like any help with working out what you have to pay tax on or whether you have to submit these forms or not, then get in touch with your normal relationship manager or anyone at JP Router and we would be very happy to help you through it. The way we do this is by asking you a series of simple questions to try and understand whether you might have given your staff non-cash benefits. These will be in areas such as whether you've given them travel allowances, entertainment, whether you've given them meals, whether you've given them other things as well. We've got a whole list of questions that we go through, but they're all quite straightforward and you'll know what they mean. After we've gone through those questions, we'll look at the transactions in a bit more detail and work out whether there's anything in there that's taxable or whether some of them maybe are tax-free or exempt. If that's the case and everything's tax-free and exempt, great, because you won't need to do a Form P11D. However, if we find things that are taxable, we'll have to put them onto a form, you'll have to tell your employees, and we'll have to submit that to HMRC so that they know how much everyone needs to pay in tax and national insurance. What happens if you don't do it? Well, if you miss that deadline of the 6th of July, there is a penalty. The penalty is £50 for every 50 employees for every month that you're late with your submission. There's also interest charged if you're late in paying your national insurance. That's the one that's due by the 22nd of July. There is a third penalty, which is if you fail to make a report that you should have made, or if you deliberately hide information or may make mistakes on the report. So it's definitely worth considering well beforehand whether there's anything that needs to be reported or not, and we'd love to help you with that. Let me give you some examples of things that might be taxable benefits in kind. A straightforward one is cars. Cars have always been right up at the top of the list. What HMRC do with cars is they say, well, let's work out the value, let's turn that into a number for the year and tax you on that number. The way they work out that is based on the carbon emissions at the moment, the carbon emissions of the car. So an electric car is basically tax-free in comparison to a gas guzzling car where you can expect to pay a much higher amount of national insurance on behalf of your staff and your employees will have a much higher tax bill. Just to follow that one through, how will they be taxed? Well, once you've told HMRC about the benefit and we've worked out the amount that needs to be taxed, HMRC will change normally. They will change the tax code that your employee has so that the amount of tax they pay over the rest of the year is higher. Other benefits in kind that we need to be looking out for are things like medical insurance. Fuel is one we see sometimes. If you're just giving your employees cash for fuel, then HMRC want to know that it's all for business miles and not for private miles, because if there's some private miles in there, then you could end up having to report benefits in kind. There are ways around this, and we can talk you through how to do that. It involves reimbursing your employer for the private miles. There are some expenses that you do not need to pay tax on. These are things that have been incurred in line with business. So for example, if you're buying office stationery and then your employer is reimbursing you for it. You are also allowed a mobile phone from your employer with no taxable benefit in kind. You are allowed some self-entertaining, but on this there is a limit that you need to know about. There is a limit that means that you can provide some reasonable entertainment, but if you spend too much on your employees, then the whole amount becomes taxable. This is £150 in the tax year. There are also tax-free allowances for bicycles if they're used to get to work, car parking if it's available to everyone, and also for childcare. This, however, is scratching the surface. And I think you've got to look in your gut and say, could HMRC look at this and say that instead of paying my staff in cash, I've given them goods, services, or a benefit instead? If that's the case, please let us know. And if you're not sure, please complete our questionnaire, because it will give us both a good indication of whether there's anything that we need to look at in more detail.